All right, welcome to our emergency preparedness class this month. We just had the opening prayer, and so we'll just go ahead and dive right in. The spiritual part of this, the topic for this month is emergency kits and emergency evacuation plans and lists. So the spiritual part that I wanted to talk a little bit about that is that the Lord has often had his people evacuate or leave many times in the world's history. And this demonstrates obedience over convenience. For example, in the scriptures, we find that there's either the Lord gives us a little bit of warning or not any warning at all. So without much warning, that I believe takes greater faith to be obedient, because you're just having to stop what you're doing and just go. And some of those examples in the scriptures are Moses in the great Exodus, Lehi taking his family into the wilderness, Ishmael on his turn probably didn't have too much time to do too much planning. Nephi and his people when they fled from the Nephi's brother, the Laman, Lemuel, and their section of people. When Alma flees from King Noah, that was an evacuation he had to perform there, as well as when Alma and the people flee before King Noah when his armies were out chasing them. So those are, again, just examples from scriptures. And recently we have in the Doctrine and Covenants when the saints had to have an evacuation from Jackson County, Missouri, over the Missouri River. And that was a definite emergency. Didn't have any time to prepare anything for that. And that had to have great faith to be able to do that. And when we demonstrate that much faith, the Lord compensates for that and will bless us. Not that it won't be hard, but he will compensate for that. Sometimes in the scriptures, we find there's a little bit of warning. And for me, that obedience is still there, but not as much as reliance on the Lord, because usually you have enough time to, quote, rely on man to kind of gather things together and be prepared. Again, it's still hard, but I think when there's a little warning, it's not as difficult. An example of that in the scriptures is the anti-Lehi Nephites when they had to evacuate to the land of Jershon. So their whole civilization's picking up, moving to Jershon, and they weren't even sure that the people in Jershon were going to allow them to come. Another is leaving Nauvoo to Utah. Someone had to make an evacuation list there, I'm sure. And some had a hard time relying on those lists, especially when it came to the hand carts. They wanted to bring more than what was allowed and needed to get rid of some stuff. Another one from the scriptures that had a little bit of time, and I'm going to put this one up, these are my coloring pages. We have Noah building the ark. The Lord told him, so he had the opportunity to accept the call. Actually, I have it here in acceptance. He heard what the Lord wanted him to do, and he accepted the plan to build an ark. Okay, that would be pretty tough in those days without everybody. I'm sure he was mocked and scorned because of that, but he put his obedience in the Lord, and so he was successful in executing that evacuation plan for that. So he's there. He just didn't have to. He didn't say, "Okay, Heavenly Father, we'll follow that plan," and just sat there. There's another part of that, and that is once you've accepted the plan, then you have to act on it. So here we have Noah is acting. He's actually physically building the ark now, according to the instructions that were given him. And part of that also was gathering food for the ark. That was an important piece because there wasn't any grocery stores to be going to. They had to do their own preparation for that. So once you have accepted something of a guidance or direction that the Lord wants you to do, you need to act on it. You need to take action to work, make, build, gather things, something like that. And then the last thing that Noah did, as an example to us, is he did it. He finished it, he moved, and he he got on the ark. Okay, he could have just said, okay, we're going to be at this point. But no, he went all the way and he got on the ark and accomplished what the Lord wanted him to do. And in our day, that's a little bit like practicing and applying what we know. We may, in our day, feel like that we've been directed to have emergency kits. We're heard that from the church side of things, from the government side of things. Just get a kit together so if you have to leave somewhere that you can grab and go. So if you believe in that and you act on that, then our time is to practice using it. Practice the skills that are within that we might need. And we'll go into some evacuation plan things later. So practicing scenarios, that's a really good thing to practice using those, applying what we know. So we are right now in a time of warning. It is up to us to heed the counsel before the emergency or evacuation happens. And we are blessed to have that time. So we're not like, Alma and his people that are fleeing King Noah. We have time. And because we have time and we're mortals and human beings, we postpone things. So be careful of that mortality, because the adversary will clue in on that as well. Go, you have plenty of time. Don't worry about it. The physical act of packing up belongings and traveling or potentially going into a dangerous wilderness or the unknown seems to be a way to test a person's faith in prophetic leadership and designed to strip away the worldly influences of life. The Lord has asked his people to flee many, many, many times over and over and over again. And sometimes I think, well, what's so different about us? Maybe we're supposed to flee the world. I'm not sure what it is. Or are we going to physically have to flee at some point? I don't know. But I want to be prepared to do whatever he asks me to do. Maybe we are asked to prepare, create emergency plans and lists and kits and never have to use them. Abraham was asked to do a very hard thing, but in the end, the Lord did not require it of him either. And are we as willing to do it and be prepared like that, and then leave it up to the Lord, whether we're going to have to access that or not? Our obedience should be just to do it, and then come what may on that. So our question on that is, how strong is our faith with this whole topic for today? Be thinking today on just one simple thing that you'd like to do by the end of the month. Give you a couple weeks to put together to do, so that you're just moving a little bit further ahead. Again, don't look at the huge thing. I can't do all of that. Just to pick something that rings true to you today. So we have a guest, Kayla Daly, and she's going to be talking to us about kits, and then it'll be turned back to me, and we'll talk more about the lists and the plans. All right, we'll turn the mic over to Kayla there. This is the mic end.
Is that in a good spot? Okay, all right. Hi. I printed off the lists of supplies for kits. I can read, you can read, we can read. I don't want to go through necessarily the supplies in particular. I want to talk about the principles of how to refine a list like that for your actual personal needs should something occur. I really like this framework here, and I want to talk about this specifically. To start, I think that it is important, you might say to learn by study and also by faith, that you build your kits by study and also by faith, that it's important to use your own knowledge and experience and understanding of where we are, what emergencies could actually occur, and your own personal needs, and to also approach building a kit with prayer. because your Heavenly Father wants to help you. And as you are putting forth the effort to build your kit, He can help guide you as to what you might specifically need. I think it's important to take into consideration where we are and what it, well, as far as general emergencies, because the kits are not just for general emergencies. I know we tend to focus on that, but they're for general emergencies and personal emergencies. But I'll start with general emergencies that happen here. Like we know because of where we are, we're close to the mountain, a wildfire evacuation is possible. We're also just out of the canyon, so flooding is also possible. For example, when I grew up in Illinois, so the most common thing that we would talk about is tornadoes and tornado drills. Well, that's not common here. So when we built our 72-hour kits, we would put them in the basement because tornadoes, basements go together. Here, if we're specifically concerned about flooding, basement and 72-hour kit does not go together. Well, I say 72-hour kit, but so this book specifically talks about different types of kits, and I think there's some overlap. You know, your circumstances may vary. In that, I think it talks about a get home kit, an emergency car kit, and a 72-hour kit. And I believe that these things can be used separately, can be used in conjunction with each other, I don't want to say interchangeably, but for example, it occurred to me when I first started building a 72-hour kit that I am far more likely to be more than 500 feet away from my house than I am to be more than 500 feet away from my car. At the time I was working in Payson, and so that was our goal. We call them 72-hour kit just because that's, colloquially, but that was what I built. I built for my car a 72-hour kit that was intended for me to find a way to get home from Payson. And so I considered that part of my emergency car kit. And that's getting more into the difference between that could be caused by either a general emergency or a personal emergency. Because even if sometimes it's fun to think post-apocalyptic, it's a electromagnetic pulse, everything's out, everything's down, there's no phones, there's no cars, there's no nothing, then what do we do? Which is important to consider, but it's more likely, my car battery dies and I can't replace it, I can't jump it, I can't replace it, I need to find a way to get somewhere, to get to someone to help them, or it's possible to be traveling in the mountains and to be snowed in. It's possible to be that it's something that is affecting you or a small group of people as opposed to national, statewide, countywide emergency. So I guess I want to really quick, before I talk about some of my principles that I take into account, what are some, just generally, as you've worked on these kits and honed these kits throughout many, 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 many years, what are some things that you consider principles of building a good emergency kit that would sustain you?
I wanted to have things inside that would provide comfort in a time of stress. You know, especially when I started working at 72-hour kids, my kids were little. And I had boys who were scouting age, so I made sure that every kid had some clean, warm socks, because scouts are big on keeping your feet dry. Seems like a good idea. In a time of stress, it'd be good to have warm feet. And then I just made sure that there were a few little toys or games in each kit for each of my kids, because I knew that if we ever needed to use those kits, it would be a stressful time. And so I wanted to have something that would bring them comfort. So their favorite candy bar and, you know, a doll or a Uno or something that could distract them and give them something fun.
I really like that. I had not considered that until I saw that in these lists. It's like, oh, bring a toy, bring a deck of cards, bring it. Like, oh yeah, yeah. I'm still gonna be a person. I'm not just gonna be a surviving animal. Like I actually, you know, that it's important to have things to keep your hands busy, keep your mind busy, so you're not going nuts. Is there anything else that anybody wants to share about things that they think are important about to consider when building these kits?
I think pack what you're going to use. Some of these kits are like, I'm never going to use that, so probably don't put that in your kit.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, my son's got certain needs for eating that I need to make sure that I've got him fed, because we may not be able to find it anywhere else
Mm-hmm.
in an emergency time.
Yeah, that's a really good thing. That, and I think I want to use that to springboard to something else that I firmly believe in, and that's to use these kits frequently, which serves two purposes. One is familiarity, that you learn to actually use the kit and you learn, like, oh, I packed cans and I don't know how to open cans with a pocket knife. I should have packed a can opener. Things like that, or things like, oh, I didn't realize that I didn't have enough of this, or oh, I never even touched these 5 things. Do they need to be in here? The other thing that provides is a good chance to refresh your kit regularly. I like to plan, for us, I like to plan one trip every summer that's not backpacking, because I have small kids, but that we bring the kits with us and we use them and we show the kids how to use them, and then we get practice using them, and then that means that we need to go home and remake them, because it's, you know, I'm pretty sure, I'm trying to remember the last time we went through them, but I do know the last time we went through them, I had I think my personal oldest was 3, and we still had like 18-month clothes for him in the bag, and that was us like overshooting. We're like, oh, okay, so he was like 6 months or a year when we made these, so we should probably refresh them more often, stuff like that. And of course, refreshing things like the food that is kept in the pack, refreshing things like batteries that are kept in flashlights in the pack, things that you won't realize are broken or not working unless you actually use them. Any comments, questions?
Medication too.
Medication, yes.
Refresh that too. 'Cause
Yes, medication expires.
even Tylenols.
That's a very good one. Yeah, it's easy to just put that in and forget to. That's another one of the things that you should be changing out frequently. Anything else before I go on? Okay. I now want to talk about my personal, actual area of expertise, which is first aid kits. There are things, I mean, your results may vary, but there are it is backing up a little bit. So a first aid kit is both a very important part of like your emergency car kit or 72-hour kit, but also an important part of an everyday carry kit. And those two kits will usually differ in size and scope. Where the 72-hour kit is the one that will generally have the like the tourniquet and the stop clot and the I did personally you could put a CPR mask in there, but it is recommended that in most cases you can actually that chest compressions in and of themselves are sufficient. So if that's one of the things you need to sacrifice, I think that that's one of the things that you can sacrifice. Remembering larger items like that, whereas in that you should have an everyday kit of first aid items, including things that are common, you know, of Band-Aids and Neosporin and the Tylenol and all that. But I've been thinking a lot recently, just in studying this, about I don't know why I'm gonna cry. This is really weird. This is not personal to me in any way. It was while I was researching the tourniquets. I actually disagree with the person that's on the website that says that tourniquets are unnecessary. But he and I are using the same data to come to opposite conclusions, because he referenced the Boston Marathon bombing, which I think, you know, just if you think about that emergency preparedness scale, like actually having supplies, you know, who has anything on them? You know, you're just essentially watching a parade, watching the race. What would you have? You know, I have a cooler with some Diet Coke in it. Like that is terrifying. But he talked about if you simply have gauze, you can pack most wounds, which I think it's just really important, because there are things you can't tourniquet. Of course, you can't tourniquet head wounds or axillary wounds or wounds in the groin. You can only tourniquet wounds on the extremities. So there is that. So the gauze is more multi-use that way, but it made it. I think about how in that situation there were so many people trying to help with what they had, and there were stories of people like trying to make tourniquets out of shoelaces, because of course, you know, that's what you have to. Someone is bleeding of the leg and you have to stop the bleeding, and so you make a tourniquet. Well, the issue is if you use something as thin as a shoelace, it both doesn't do the job and can cause both pain and massive tissue damage. I know we're not specifically talking about first aid. I know that comes up in a couple months, but I want to stress that both having the supplies and knowing how to use them are both part of the kit. That having the knowledge to understand you know, how to actually be of most help to the people that are hurting is included in the kit. Your know-how is part of the kit. I'm trying to think. I didn't write notes. I should have written notes. But I think in general, those are the things that I have. I guess the other principle that I would share is packing things that are as reusable as possible. Packing things, considering things that are as multi-purpose as possible. And I'd like to stand behind and second all of these things. That it's true that there is an act of faith in making the kit in the first place. It is a humbling experience that reminds us of our own mortality, which we don't often think about here in this wonderful, beautiful place that we have that has, grocery stores that are flowing with milk and honey, and that, the building of the kit itself can be a spiritual experience, and the having of the kit can be of course, if built well and used well and practiced with, can be life sustaining. If it needs to be, heaven forbid. And I will turn the time over.
Thank you, Kayla. Appreciate that. And just as a reminder, the email that was sent out has a whole bunch of attachments. There's a lot of kit information, different types of kit information, and different evacuation and different plan forms and ideas on that. And there's a lot of way to think about the 72-hour kit, so I appreciate, and just kits in general. I have people that I know that just want to go buy one at Costco and be done. The MREs, sorry, wrong field. The MREs, and be done for 40 years. That's okay. Maybe that's going to help them in that situation. When you have like smaller kids, that's a whole other piece of that, to have toys and activities for them. So take a look at that, go through that. There is so much information out there that you have to maybe take responsibility of doing what you need to do for your family, because every family is so different that we can't say you need to have this, and this in your car kit or your 72-hour kit, because everyone is so different. Before I go into my part a little bit, I wanted just to, I brought a sample of my car kit, which is like a 72-hour kit in my car, just a shovel that I have. And I believe in wheels, okay? Maybe because I'm getting older. And I have 2 kids with disabilities. And so I just wanted to share some of these ideas with you. Is their 72-hour kits are backpacks that have wheels on them. So we can strap them on their back until they get tired, and then I can actually do it like a suitcase, and they can pull. And if that all fails, then I usually have this in my car collapsed, and I could actually probably pull an adult in there if I had to, or they could pull me. That's even a better idea. And if your 72-hour kits, which if you really get things in there that you really want, they do get to be a little heavy. But luggage racks are great. Just the old-fashioned stuff that we used to have. You can get them at DI or something. Be able to use bungee cords to strap them on, and then again have wheels to get where you need to go for a distance. Again, that's not going to help too much in rural areas when you're going through gravel. Something like that could go through gravel. So get something with larger wheels. Attaching things on the outside, that's always an option in case you've run out of space on the inside. Just get some different type of C-clamps and different things to be able to put things on the outside. My principle is that if I have things, I actually have a backpack. That's why I'd have to have that, because there's no way I'm going to put that backpack on me. But it has a ton of things in it, because I don't know what the emergency is going to be. So once that emergency happens, I can go out. We don't need that. We just need this. So, but my options are already there. I don't have to go scrounging around for them. So that was just a couple of things I wanted to share on that. Okay. I don't get to go on vacation very often, but I did last week. Went on a plane. 4 planes, all delayed. It was just, but what is the one thing that they do about evacuations on a plane?
Leave everything.
What is that?
Leave everything.
Leave everything. They always tell you leave everything, but the stewardess gets up and goes, does the whole little shebang and exits. They don't even do that anymore. They just say, look around to see the nearest exit. Does anyone look around for the nearest exit? Nobody. Do you?
Oh, yeah.
I do too. But I don't see anybody going, oh yeah, there's one back there. I don't see, I watched for that actually. And I took a picture of it. I go, the little card. Does anybody even read that little card? If we ran over water, I'd be toast. I wouldn't even know how to get my life jacket out from underneath my seat because I've accepted that there's a plan. I'm acting by just listening to them, but I have not applied it. I haven't practiced it at all. And so for me, it's not going to do me any good. So I was thinking about in what situations do we see evacuation plans? What are some of the things where do we find them at?
In schools.
Schools. And do they practice? They practice. Where else?
Hospitals.
Hospitals. Do they practice? They do all the time. Where else?
You see them on the back of hotel doors.
Yes, that was one of the things on here. Have you ever read that? I mean, do you go to your hotel and go, okay, I'm going to have to go down a flight of stairs? Oh, that's where the exit's going to be. No. Marianne?
I do, and I read the airplane things. And
Good.
I look at the exits in the movie theater.
Good. And that is so key. I'm going to throw this in there. It's I wasn't really going to talk about this, but it's the OODA loop way of making decisions. And for when I worked for the School for the Blind, that was one of the annual trainings of an active gunman. We had to go over it every year and just watch this thing. About basically, you've got to know when you come into a building, does anything look weird? Where's my exit signs? And be aware. So if you have that mentality of kind of knowing where the exit signs and just general information, that if an emergency of any kind does happen, you're going to be one step ahead of the game. I personally, when an emergency happens, I'm not going to be reading the back of my hotel door. I'm going to be running knowing that there's an exit sign at the end of those hallways somewhere. I'm not going to get on the elevator. I'll go down the stairs, but be in charge of you and your family and keeping them safe, because we don't know what kind of emergency is going to happen in our crazy world, because it can happen anytime. Marianne?
My oldest daughter teaches junior high and high school down in Nephi, and they had a hard lockdown a couple of months ago, I think. And so they had to lock their doors, and then luckily it was during her prep period, and she only had a few kids. And they went and she locked everybody in a closet. But she had a 5-gallon bucket there in case anyone had to go to the bathroom and stuff. But she said, what was really hard is once you're in there and you're all locked, if you hear, they heard other kids coming around, but they were already locked in, and they were not allowed to open the door in case it was the person with the gun.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is something that schools actively do, because it is a real thing in our society right now, right? Those are real emergencies. We don't only have just earthquakes, we have some crazy people out there that can create emergencies on our behalf. Okay, cruise ships. I haven't been on a cruise, but I heard within the first 24 hours, they actually set you through a emergency preparedness thing. If something happens, this is, you're assigned to that boat.
They have
So-
to do that before everybody has to go to their muster station before the ship can leave port.
There you go. So see, there's a plan. And I thought, okay, all these places have plans, and why aren't we doing that? Because it's not, we're human, and it is not legally demanded of us to do these things. It is of them. It is by law. They have to do these things, and therefore it's done. So maybe I need to shift our mindset on making that requirement. We are requiring it of ourselves to start making some of these plans. Another place that I hadn't thought about was my sons go to Dan Peterson, and they have to do evacuations off of buses with wheelchairs. And that's multiple times a year that they have to do that. And the teacher says that is the most draining activity that they do because one is physically demanding. These kids are scared. But if they do that, then what about our families? I mean, if we can prepare our families for some of these potential emergencies, practicing doing the what if scenarios, not to scare them, but the schools are sure scaring them. I mean, there is a depth of reality that is happening, and we need to be doing that, I think, as families as well as informing our families so that they have the knowledge that they need to combat what they could be facing, them or their friends. Yes.
So I used to live in Vineyard, and we had to go to church up in Orem, and the fire alarm went off while we were at church, and no one knew what to do, and people stayed in the building. They didn't know where to take the kids. They didn't know anything to do. All we have in our church is just a little sign. My sister, on the contrast, she lives in Kansas City, and every 5th Sunday they have a fire drill. They have armed people at their doors of the chapel while the sacrament's taking place. Like,
A different,
I think there's extremes in both regards.
right. And so she was talking about, just in case the people at home did not hear about that, of different church buildings having, in different parts of the United States, having different emergency practices compared to nothing at all. But again, that's something that the wards could do, to put on something like that. Your family could do that and say, okay, let's go to the church. Now, if we were in this room and something happened, where would you go? And teach them about the exit signs and helping them start to be aware of that. Yes.
Yeah, there was a time when I was in 9th grade where they prepared my class on the big Utah earthquake. However, she was very into the fear factor part of it, and basically was like, the earthquake's gonna happen and most of you will die. And we were like, okay. And she was like, family will die, friends will, and we're like, oh, okay. And they show us this video, and then she goes, okay, so make sure this is done. But all I got out of that is an earthquake's gonna hit and I'm gonna die. Or my family's gonna die and I'm gonna be an orphan. And so I got home and I like near tears. My mom's like, what happened? I was like, the earthquake's coming. And she's like, what? And they sat me down, and at dinner they explained, like, yes, that might happen, but this is what we do to prepare for that. We actually don't need to worry, and no, not all of us will die. And so that experience really taught me that fearing, kind of in the sense, like, it's not a plan. If the alarm goes off, we're all going to freak out, but if there's no plan, we're just going to freak out. It's the plan of, okay, this is what you get your house to look like and what things you put in your emergency kit for the earthquake. But just being scared, I think, is such an outdated tactic, because then, there is no plan with that.
Right. I agree. There is no plan with fear. And that's why if we can give people knowledge, you have to have, like the kit you're talking about, you have to have the kit plus the knowledge to go with it. Mm-hmm. And we have that responsibility to help ourselves and our family to know those two pieces and what fits for our situations. Okay. Some of the papers that are were attached to the emails, we've got a couple copies back there, but I wanted to ask you just some questions. This is an evacuation self-test. And we'll go through it really quickly. What would you grab if you had a full day's warning before a disaster would happen? What would you grab if you had 30-minute warning? What if you had 10 minutes? And what if you only had moments? Where will you go if only your home is affected? Where will you go if only your immediate area is affected? And where would you go if your area and hundreds of miles around you are affected? How will you gather all your family members? Where you will gather where will you be meeting together? And how will you communicate with local and long distance family members? Okay, Those are some really basic questions. And it doesn't take long to make a plan once you start thinking about it. So I copied this from hers. I retyped it, but it's a very simple one. There are very complex plans. This one comes from the National Center for Disaster Preparedness. It's like a 13-page document, goes into lots of details. There's that version, and there's this version, depending on how detailed you want to be. A lot of these preparedness websites have wizards now, so you can go onto it and just start filling things out, and then it's going to spit your plan out for you. We have the Be Ready Utah has a wizard for that. Be Ready Utah is a really great source. They have really beefed that up, and it has tons of information on that. Again, the National Center for Disaster Preparedness is another example. But this one I wanted to just go through briefly is very simple. You list your out-of-town contacts, your neighborhood meeting place, your regional meeting place, evacuation locations. So put the address and the name and phone number of those people. And then for long distance, what would that be? Family member information, and if there's any allergies, your work locations that you're usually at, the schools, and other places that you might frequent often. And then just general information like your doctor, pediatrician, dentist, and other. And then information like your medical, home, auto, life, bank account information, being able to have all that. And then automatic payments or when your bills are due, just so you have that written down be able to reference that quickly. And then service numbers. So that's a very, very short, to the point, a plan, having that information all in one place. Another thing that when I was going through this for the first time, when I had all my kids at home, I had made up like a document folder that would go in their backpacks, in their 72-hour kits, with black and white pictures, because if you have lost somebody, they want a black and white picture so that they can get that out on the news or something to be able to find an individual quickly, as well as like your home insurance and things like that, because if you call up your home insurance after a disaster has happened and you have your policy number, you're going to get helped a little bit faster than someone who goes, I have no idea, my house just is not there and I'm away and I don't know. So have the information that you need, the key things that, and again, not going to take very long to gather that together. Okay. Yes, Minka.
I like writing down the bill thing and stuff on there. My brother has had some health challenges, and one was a stroke. And his children got over the trust, and they're still trying to figure out what needs to be paid and go. I mean, it took them like 2 weeks to figure out what's auto pay, what's not paid, and they have to pay, and it was just because his thinking is not, there.
Yeah, and that's a family emergency,
And so
right?
so I can see where that's, or if someone passes away suddenly that you don't know that information, it can be, yeah.
Well, and I like that for you bringing that up, because I think many times in a marriage relationship, there's usually one spouse that does the finances, and the other person doesn't necessarily know all the time what's going on. And if that person dies that does the finances, the other person's up the creek on that. All right. Okay, so making a plan is important. Different types of plans, but make a plan. Another plan, I'll do this one here, is for a fire drill. Okay, it's just a simple little map that you would make. I wanted to read. It has some ideas. This comes from. It's on the PG emergency website that also has a lot of good information. But it says just for adults, kids, you want to kind of make it fun. Well, let me say, we've got a little bit of time. It says, make a map of your home, mark your doors and windows that can be used to get out of every room, choose a meeting place outside in the front, and then you're going to draw that little picture. Write the emergency telephone numbers of the fire department on your escape plan. Sound the alarm and practice an escape drill with everyone in your home, and keep your escape plan on the refrigerator and practice the drill twice a year when everyone maybe celebrates a birthday or something like that. So I thought that was very simple. The adult version of that is walk through your home and identify 2 ways to get out of each room. I've done that thinking, okay, if my son is in the room with me and there's a fire, how in the world am I going to get him out this window? You know, it makes you think. It makes you think about how I would get out of those rooms. And then choose a meeting place outside so that everyone can meet. And when the firefighters come, that I can quickly identify who's there and who's not. And then practice escape drills twice a year. So again, a simple thing, but you know, it's going to give a peace of mind knowing if that happens, that, oh, we've already kind of practiced that a little bit.
Brenda,
Yes.
we got one of those escape ladders
Yep.
for Christmas many, many years ago. And my kids were really little. And we decided for family home evening we were going to have a fire drill and put the ladder out of the bedroom window. And the kids' bedrooms, they're like 2.5 stories off the ground. And so Carl was down at the bottom holding onto the ladder, and I was at the top. And it came to the point where I needed to put them out the window. I couldn't do it. I could not do it. But we decided, instead we decided to take them down and on the ground and let them practice climbing up.
Oh, there you go.
And so I thought, you know, if it really was an emergency, I would put them out the window, but I just couldn't.
Let them practice that one.
That box has sat in our hallway for close to 30 years.
Yeah. So
Never used it, but it still sits there.
there you go. So at least you're prepared with that there if
Yeah.
you need to use that. Good. Okay, making a list. I really liked. Okay, so on this paper that I've emailed out to you is a really generic version of it. There's a little chart here. It says if you had 5 minutes, 30 minutes, or 1 hour, what the item is and where's the location. Then you just kind of, if you had a 1 hour or more, then you would add all those columns together and be able to go take those things. When we had that fire a couple years ago and it kept coming down the mountain, I'm going, okay, now what's maybe going to happen? It made me, I don't have a plan. And so I had written out a plan. But I like the way that Michelle Jorgensen in her book has really kind of broken it out. And I want to just read what she has said, how she did it. She said, I walked through my home with a clipboard looking at everything in every room. I made lists for what I would take if I had 5 minutes, evacuating 30 minutes, 1 hour, or 1 day. Then I sat down with my family and went through the list, making sure I included all the necessities as well as precious sentimental items. Because what might be important to you may not be important to them, and vice versa. When we talked about what we would need to do in those same periods of time, the things that are absolutely essential to grab or do are at the top of each list. I printed off multiple copies of my list and put them in the garage, my bedroom, the kitchen, and my storeroom. We should be able to all be able to find one in any type of an emergency. So I like that, just the fact that she just went to a room, clipboard, what would I take out of here? Okay, what would I take out of here? It wouldn't take very long. You could do that in one evening with your family and then go through that and say, what's important to you? Again, that's going to be different for all families. Okay, we talked about the fire. Cash is another thing to be aware of with your kits of some type. If you can either have them or close by, they suggest even like $100 if you can in small bills. I know in the Pinsons, we're in that earthquake in Southern California, that real big one. He had to walk, I can't remember if it was a mile to get water because there wasn't access to any water. And a guy was selling those little 16-ounce things of water for like $5. But if you only had a 10, you may not get another 5 back, type of a thing. And so just have enough small change in bills probably, because credit cards aren't going to work. You're not going to Venmo anybody. But there may be something that you need that someone's willing to buy from you or to trade. So money is something to consider when you're getting your kits of any kind together. Okay. So as a review, we want to be like Noah, right? We want to get on the ark. Let's accept the challenge to do something this month. Let's take that action, work at it, build it, gather it, and then plan a time when you can start practicing it, coming up with those scenarios. And they can just be little pieces of paper on your kitchen table when you're having a meal saying, what would you do if? What would you do if? Do we have that? Oh, yeah, we do. Cool. And there's a peace of mind that starts coming because it's like, yeah, okay, I'm not totally prepared, but I'm okay for a little bit here. So practicing it is huge. Okay, so any other thoughts or questions?
This just keeps coming to me about having a thumb drive maybe in your emergency pack of like important pictures or something, or not, I don't, you have enough electricity or stuff, but you know, it's, if you're able to grab that in a fire or something, it might.
You'd have at least something.
Yeah.
Another thing to go along with a thumb drive, for those that are far away from us, we haven't forgotten you, is like if you have a packet of important documents or a thumb drive, and you have a relative that's out of state, you guys can switch information if you're comfortable with sharing that type of information with them. Then they can be that resource for you in case you've lost everything. Even pictures. I mean, you can put so much on terabyte drives and things now. So yeah. All right. I think we've got it. Next month it is on preparing your home, your shelter or home, whatever that is, for an emergency. So come for that, and I think that's it. Janet.
So on the communications, when Jim did it, so I started trying to do it. Your phone has like your addresses, so you can print those off now before your phone dies.
I need to learn how to do that, printing my addresses and contacts off, because I worry about that. If I lost my phone or it drops into water and it's gone, we have so much on our phones. So I need to learn how to do that. Don't want that kind of emergency. All right, do we have a volunteer? We're going to actually close off with the live stream. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next month. And do we have a volunteer for closing prayer?